Hello, 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 and welcome to the 6th episode of Mixed Media Reviews Season 2. My name is Kelsey, and today I'll be talking about a movie. This week's movie is The Batman. I knew about two things going into watching The Batman. One, Robert Pattinson was Batman. Two, it had good reviews. That was it. So according to Rotten Tomatoes, where it got a pretty solid B rating from the audience and critics alike, the summary is as follows. Batman ventures into Gotham City's underworld when a sadistic killer leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues. As the evidence begins to lead closer to home and the scale of the perpetrator's plans become clear, he must forge new relationships, unmask the culprit, and bring justice to the abuse of power and corruption that has long plagued the metropolis. This is actually going to be a fairly spoiler-heavy episode. Like all of the spoilers, every bit of the movie, I will just lay out for you because I have a lot to say about this movie. So be warned if you haven't seen it and you don't want spoilers, because this is an episode that will contain many spoilers. Overall, I actually really liked The Batman. It had some cool shots, the acting was pretty good, and I even liked the story. So first up, I really appreciate that this isn't an origin story, because we have definitely seen too many origin stories when it comes to superhero movies and TV shows. This story is about a very seasoned Batman. We are well into his story at this point, though that doesn't mean that his past is irrelevant. I like that we still get a connection to his parents in this story, but that it's kind of only part and not the point of the movie or the whole arc. I think Pattinson did a terrific job in this role. While it's obviously not Pattinson's real voice that he uses, even in an Americanized version of it, I appreciate that he doesn't try to go even lower when he's Batman versus Bruce Wayne. He has a very consistent voice throughout, so good job, Robert Pattinson. And I don't know why it's taken us so many Batman iterations to get us here, especially since that's like always the number one thing that Batman movies get made fun of, the Batman voice. So again, thank you for finally fixing it. I also like that Batman wasn't perfect in this movie. Like that scene where he pulled the parachute too soon under the bridge and like slammed into it. I laughed so hard at that scene. And I'm hoping we were supposed to laugh because it was freaking hilarious and I was like dying laughing. And I think it's proof that even experts in a field can make mistakes, right? Like, he's not perfect. Even if he is seasoned and has been at this a very long time, he still isn't maybe the best at everything that he does. I also really like that Bruce Wayne isn't like insanely ripped with muscles on his muscles like we typically see, especially nowadays in our superhero films. He's of course fit and he's toned. He has muscle definition for sure that would give me a run for my money. Like, I'm sure that Robert Pattinson was still doing some major workout regimens and eating a very strict diet. And I'm sure they even in the scenes where he was shirtless, like, did the whole dehydrating you because that's how they make the muscles pop. And it is all a farce. And that being said, he obviously, like, it's pretty obvious that Robert Pattinson has a I'm trying not to sound creepy about it. He does look like he works out and he does have a toned body. So it looks fine. It's not the bodybuilder look that we may be used to in some of our superheroes, but he still looks like he could take somebody in a fight, and Bruce Wayne is obviously a trained fighter, and we see that he's got damage, he, has memory issues, obviously, because that's why he's keeping the journal. He's got scars all over him that aren't, like supposed to be like, oh, they're in these perfect locations to make it look, like the sexy scars or something. They're just typical scars that you would get if you were beaten up all the time, which, as you see in this movie, he is obviously beaten up all the time. He does not know how to protect himself, and he just takes lots of hits. But I'm getting a little sidetracked. Anyway, so he he's fit without being too much. And, you know, in all Batman movies ever, the suit is the one that has the muscles. So there's no point to really give him the muscles anyway. And I think that's a really great choice. I think it was Robert Pattinson's choice to not like bulk up like a ridiculous amount, because it's not an attainable body type for the majority of people. And I think not only is that a bold choice for Robert Pattinson to kind of put his foot down about, I think it's the right choice for, of course, many reasons. Of course, there's the social aspect of it, of, you know, women, we are always trying to fight to have more realistic body types. And that being, you know, a diverse set of body types, because there are people who are very thin, there are people who are larger, there are people who are short, there are people who are taller. Like, we are a very wide range of human, right? So we should be fighting also for men to not always have to have a very unrealistic body image. So of course that is something that we should very much try to incorporate whenever we can, and that is, I think, one of the reasons that Robert Pattinson wanted to do this was literally because he shouldn't have to. But I also just think it really makes sense for the Bruce Wayne that this movie has created. Bruce Wayne isn't really the type to be working out and eating 3 dozen eggs a day to be like Gaston. He's a much more down-to-earth type of Bruce Wayne than we have seen before, and I could not imagine him being in the gym for all hours of the day so that he can have an 8-pack or whatever. And I really love this direction for Bruce Wayne, and I just really appreciate everything about him, which kind of brings me to my next point, is just about Bruce Wayne in general in this movie. Most of the time we get the same kind of Batman and Bruce Wayne characters, regardless of, you know, how fresh or old the Batman is. Bruce Wayne is always some ladies' man who parties with his billions, while Batman is always this dark hero. But not this time, guys. Not this time. Instead, we get a very secluded Bruce Wayne. And while we don't, or at least I don't think we do, know if Bruce has necessarily always been this way or if it's become more pronounced as the years have passed, I really like this version of Bruce that we get. Like I said, he's got memory issues. You know, we see him keeping this journal about, you know, losing memories and him trying to kind of keep track of all the things that happen, which, again, makes sense. He's a lot more depressed than we've seen before. He's more closed off than we've seen before, which, again, make sense. He's been doing this a long time, and he's seen a lot of dark things, including his parents' murder. So it makes sense that billionaire Bruce Wayne isn't out partying all the time. It makes sense that that could be a way that he copes. But I like that this is a different take on that, and that he's at home in his Batcave doing research. He's making limited public appearances. He's known as kind of a stay-at-home guy, of someone who's not really out in the public a lot. It's a freaking great idea, and I absolutely loved the direction that they went with Bruce Wayne. I also really loved, like a little quick shout out to the Wayne Manor. I loved it, especially, you know, his entrance into the Batcave was super cool and different than we've seen before. I also really loved the neo-Gothic architecture of Wayne Manor contrasted with all the modern technology. One thing I absolutely love, and if you know me, you probably know this about me already, but I really love the clash between old and new. I love when I get to go to cities that actually have old versus new. Like when I was in London, I loved being able to see, like, getting up close to those buildings and seeing just on one side of an expansion joint a building that was built in the 1800s or the 1700s, and then on the other side of the expansion joint was a contemporary, like, glass and steel building. I was in heaven watching the scenes inside the Batcave with all the monitors and tools, with those neo-Gothic arches as just this beautiful backdrop to really punch through that contrast between the modern world that Batman is kind of living in mixed with that old neo-Gothic architecture that he just kind of lives in, which would be so cool. But also, like, that's kind of what Gotham is. Gotham is like this city that, like, whenever you watch anything that has to do with Gotham, you're never really quite sure about what year it is because the cars look like they're from the 80s, but everyone's got a cell phone that's a smartphone, and maybe there's bits of the 60s in there, and you're just really confused about what era it is. So I really love the clash between that old and the new, and I love that it's highlighted in his, like, residence, even outside of just my own weird like opinions and preferences and things that I like. I like that this is also a little mini representation of what Gotham is. I also really liked the Batman gadgets in this one. His motorcycle looked pretty much like a typical motorcycle, which makes sense because he's doing, like, surveillance work, so you wouldn't want this crazy decked out thing. So I liked that it was like a typical motorcycle. And oh my god, his Batmobile is probably hands down my favorite Batmobile to ever exist. I mean, it was so cool. The scene where the car is, like, leaping out of the flames when he's chasing Penguin, oh my god, so freaking cool. And, like, the speedometer inside, I loved it. I loved it. And it totally matches with Bruce Wayne's, like, 1960s Corvette that he had. Of course he's gonna have this cool, like, old Batmobile when he drives a 60s Corvette, right? Loved it. Loved it so much. What else? I'm going to talk about the darkness of the film a bit later, but there is one scene where Batman is in a hallway. It's when he's coming after Falcone, and he's going into the room where Selina and Falcone were at, and he's, like, walking through the hallway, and it's really dark, and he gets lit up by gunfire, and we see this, like, strobe light effect of him kicking butt. And I really do like that scene. It is, like, if there is a time and a place to use darkness to your advantage in a movie or in a scene, like again, DC, not the entire movie, but, like, a scene or a part of the movie. Like, this is the perfect time to do it, right? You can really play up that darkness and the light, and you can really use that contrast, and you can use it to make it feel eerie and creepy because, you know, you can really feel that fear when you're only seeing a bits and pieces of Batman pop up to, you know, wrench a gun away from a gunman or, like, kick someone in the face. And it was perfect. It was a perfect way to really use that darkness. And again, DC, not for the entire movie. You only use it for a little bit. But that was, like, the perfect scene. Loved it. I also really like that Batman, who, you know, is a vigilante, is the inspiration for the Riddler for this movie. I don't really read the comics, so I don't know if this is just a thing that is typical of the comics or not, or of the Riddler's character, but I really love that he is the inspiration for him in this movie. And I also really love just really the entire arc or the theme of the movie. We see so often that Batman, you know, being this dark vigilante, but it's nice to see his, like, a slightly different side of him being that dark vigilante. It's because of that, like, vigilante justice that the Riddler is born. He too is seeking out his own justice. While Batman goes after blue-collar criminals, or, you know, however you want to put that, those are the seedy underbelly of the city that are responsible for the drugs and the crime. Riddler goes after those in power, those who actually allow those seedy underbelly types to thrive. He goes after the corrupt, but instead of, you know, the blatantly corrupt ones like Batman, they're the more subtle ones, like the politicians in the city. Batman definitely does do good in the world, right? He stops criminals. He protects people by getting them off the streets. But, like he loves to tell us, like in the opening line of the movie, he does it in the shadows. And people may benefit from what he does, but it's not really that direct benefit, right? Like he saves them and protects them, but it's because he's actively attacking the criminals, the seedy underbelly, the mafia type people. That is until the end of this movie. When he falls in the water, he's basically like, he becomes baptized, you know? His shadows are cleansed. And when he comes out of the water, he's not beating up the bad guys to save the day, but he's going to save the people's lives directly. He's bringing them to safety. And when they leave that darkness of the stadium, they greet a brighter day. Well, bright for a DC film. And it's such a good story. It's such a good story. It's the reverse of what we normally see, right? Normally, like the last Batman iterations, it was Batman doing his thing and then him becoming, the Dark Knight, where people didn't appreciate him and he went darker into the night to fight bad guys or whatever. But this is Batman kind of realizing that his way of doing things has a downside. It can inspire the wrong people. And sometimes the best thing to do isn't to go after those seedy criminals, but it's to help the actual citizens in your community, to help your fellow neighbor, right? Spider-Man is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man because he doesn't just stop criminals, he also saves people from everyday things. And that is something that I think is really cool, that this movie, if they potentially do more, could really explore maybe, and obviously that's not really Batman's thing. He's a dark noir film, kind of a detective, whatever. But it would be an interesting side to see of Batman that we don't typically see, of him getting a cat out of a tree or saving someone from falling. Like, those aren't things that you see of him, and that would be kind of cool to see, I think. Lastly, I just want to say that I did like everybody's performance in this movie. Besides Pattinson, I thought Zoe Kravitz was a pretty good Selina, and I really liked her character. I genuinely couldn't even see that Colin Farrell was the Penguin, even when I was looking at people in the film and I saw that he was the Penguin. I still look at him and say, are you sure that it was actually Colin Farrell? Like, you can kind of see it in the eyes, but man, they did a really good job of making him look so different. And I really appreciated that they didn't go over the top with his penguinness. The Gotham show, was it just called Gotham, where it followed like Commissioner, well, he wasn't Commissioner, Officer Gordon at the time, maybe Detective Gordon, whatever he was. That one was a pretty good Penguin too, because it wasn't super penguin-y, but they still, kind of gave him the waddle and everything. Anyway, Paul Dano was a great Riddler. The only other Riddler I think we've ever really had was Jim Carrey, so I really liked what Paul Dano brought to the performance. I think Dano just really did a great job in like that unhinged kind of a role. I thought Jeffrey Wright, or Beatty from The Hunger Games, was great as Gordon, and I thought his take was very different from what we've seen in the past of Gordon. And really, I'm only thinking of Gary Oldman and Ben McKenzie. So he was kind of a more, toned down version. Like, he was very kind of, level. It kind of matched that, Batman, that Robert Pattinson's Batman was more like depressed seeming. I don't know. It was cool. And I also, of course, loved that the twins from Teen Wolf, Charlie and Max Carver, were in this movie, and I think it's hilarious that in this movie they were just labeled as the twins, which is what they were in Teen Wolf. So maybe one day they'll get a role that doesn't rely on the fact that they're twins. And of course, Andy Serkis, is that how you say his name, as Alfred, was great, and John Turturro, I don't know how to say his last name, as Falcone. They were great too. I mean, the list could go on. I think I pretty much already named everybody in the movie, but I will say that I think the acting was pretty good for something that, DC doesn't always have great acting in their movies. So this was a good job. You cast everyone pretty well, I think. All right, let's get to the bits that are the critiques. The first critique is something that I'm pretty sure everyone's thinking, so I'm just gonna start there. The Batman? Really? You're gonna call this movie The Batman? The Batman sounds so dumb. It sounds like a fake title. Like, someone's like, what movie are you watching? Oh, the Batman? The Batman movie? I don't know. Like, people don't call him the Batman, right? Like, I feel like there's been a million jokes written around people calling him the Batman. It's a lackluster title. And it's a weird one. It does not, like, even writing it down on my phone when I was taking notes, I wrote Batman. I didn't write the Batman, because that's weird. Unless it's the Batman. The Batman does sound better than the Batman. But it's still bad. It's just bad. It's bad. Major critique of this movie is the same critique for, again, every single DC movie. It's too dark. The entire film is too dark. Every room is dark. Ever. The police precinct? Dark, of course. Why would you have a perfectly lit police precinct? You don't need to see in there. You're in a room in a house? Dark. Oh, you're in a church? Dark. You're outside in the daytime? Oh, it's still dark. You're in a dark alley? It's dark. Like, the visuals don't have to be dark to give it a dark feel. Like, you don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be dark visually to have it feel dark. That's not a thing. And yes, like I said, there were times where the darkness was perfect and it's a good touch. I mean, Batman is, like I said, like a noir detective, right? So it makes sense to really play up that contrast of the light and the darkness of the shadows. It speaks to who Batman is, especially in this movie, right? About him transforming from this kind of, would you say, a beacon of darkness to this well of darkness to a beacon of hope. But I hate dark places that shouldn't be dark. I hate it. I hate it so much. It makes me feel really uncomfortable. I don't know why, but like it also just makes it feel like unrealistic. Like, why would this crime scene be so dark that detectives miss evidence because they literally cannot see it? Like, yeah, you don't want to see Batman, I guess, bright light shining on his bat suit so you can see all the cuts and scratches on it or something. I don't know. But, like, a crime scene shouldn't be so super dark, right? A crime scene should be lit so that they can look at the blood instead of me squinting at my TV to be like, what am I missing? Is there blood on there? I don't know. I can't see because it's dark. It's a huge pet peeve. Just light it up. And you know what? I kind of want to see Batman in the light. I want to see him interact with people where he can't be hiding in the shadows. I want his face to be seen. Like, give me I want to see it. But DC as a whole just doesn't understand how to make movies dark without them literally being dark. And again, drives me insane. Huge pet peeve to have darkened rooms that shouldn't be dark. And then, like, it's overcast every single second of every single day. Like, there's not a day of sunshine in that entire city ever. It's like worse than Forks, Washington. It's ridiculous. I also thought that the beginning of the movie was a bit slow. I might get told that that's wrong. Of course, it wasn't slow in terms of, like, actions or events because the action is, like, immediate, you know. He's talking about how he's, you know, Shadow Batman and stuff. And then he, like, takes out some criminals. And there's, like, a murder and stuff. But, like, it took us so long to, like, see Bruce Wayne. And even, I think, Batman. Maybe it was just Bruce Wayne. But, like, I don't know. Like, maybe that's okay because the focus isn't really on him, right? The focus is on Batman and, like, the people that he's going after. But it just felt slow to get into. Maybe that was just me. I don't know. You'll have to let me know what you thought. Like I mentioned earlier with the chase sequence of Batman and Batman and Penguin. While I love the sequence of the car chase of Batman and Penguin, it seemed super anticlimactic. Like, Batman and Gordon have Penguin tied to a column, like, under a bridge or something, maybe, and then they just, like, leave him there when they're done questioning him. Are they going to arrest him? Like, they literally just caught him in the middle of a drug deal, and also he just, like, probably killed a bunch of people on the freeway and, like, was, like, driving recklessly. So, like, you could probably arrest him on a lot of charges, but they just leave him there. Like, maybe Gordon radioed in, like, hey, can you pick up this dude that I have strapped to a column? But they didn't show that, and it just seems really weird that they ask him a bunch of questions, and the Penguin speaks Spanish, and they don't, and then they just were like, all right, thanks for that, see you later, have fun being tied to this column. Yeah, it was just really weird. I also did not like pretty much any interaction between Batman and Selina. Like, I thought Selena's character was interesting. I liked that she ended up being the daughter of Falcone. I liked that she, was working in that like bar thing, that she had the connection to Penguin. I liked that she, had that friend. But like anytime she was with Batman, I just didn't care. I did think it was hilarious though when Batman is like first in Selena's apartment and he sees all the cats and is like, "You've got a lot of cats." And I don't know if it was supposed to be hilarious, but again, I was dying laughing because like the way Pattinson delivers it of just like straight faced and then the look on her face and like all of the cats around, I don't know. It was hilarious to me. But yeah, like the only time I liked them interacting together really. I did not like when he was a creep watching her change into the Catwoman like costume thing while on the roof of the building across from her. That made me feel uncomfortable that he was just watching her with binoculars. Like I thought he was gonna look away like a gentleman or like a decent human being would, but instead he like watches her put it on. I'm like, hey, yeah, like not cool, Bruce, not freaking cool. But then like everything about them and their relationship just felt really forced. We see he's like pretty stoic and not super talkative. He's just kind of there when they're next to each other, like talking. And yet Selena is somehow like, I'm all about that for some reason. I don't know. It's weird. They have negative chemistry. Not even no chemistry, like negative chemistry. Like they repel each other. They are repelling magnets or something. I don't know. Like I didn't even get friend vibes from them. That it felt weird that they were like more romantic than I was like, oh, they should just be friends. Like I didn't think they should be anything past acquaintances at the most. But it was really weird and honestly it's just super boring. Every part of them trying to be a relationship or like make it a thing. It really, like it felt like they were just adding it to check it off on a list. Like, oh yeah, the lore says they're in a relationship. Sometimes they've been in a relationship in the past, so gotta make sure that in this movie they kiss with their mouths. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I don't think it brought anything to the story. I don't think it made it more interesting for the movie. I just hated it. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is like the climax of the film, right? So basically everyone's like in the stadium thing waiting for election results and, we know the bad guys are setting up and they're like up above everybody in the crowd so that they can like start shooting people and doing whatever. And Batman decides this is the perfect way to enter into this situation. I'm gonna bomb the glass dome that's all around, the ceiling of the stadium. And then when the glass shatters, I'm just going to jump down onto this TV, Jumbotron screen thing in the center. And then I'm just going to fight the bad guys. And we'll just ignore the fact that you just blew up a bunch of glass and let it rain down 50 feet. And, like, that didn't murder anyone. And, like, I get from the architectural standpoint that this wouldn't be, regular glass. It'd probably have some kind of... It'd probably be like tempered glass and it would break probably in better whatever because you never know if something's going to fall and break it. And like this is Gotham, which I think Gotham is supposed to be similar to Chicago, which is a windy place. And I'm sure Windy City has some regulations about, I don't know, like impacts and stuff like that to glass. And I'm sure if it's horizontal glass above people, it probably has to have some kind of special rating, I would think. But even then, like that's a lot of glass, and glass still cuts people even if it's like tempered, right? Or it could, maybe not, I don't know. The point is you just threw a bunch of glass on a bunch of people that is now falling 50 feet through the air. Like, yeah, it kind of looked cool, but now like all those people are dead. And that kind of just goes back to the fact that he doesn't really care about saving people. He just cares about fighting these criminals. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's it. Like I said, I really liked this Batman version, even if I did just complain for a bit. I am curious, again, if they'll continue in like a sequel or if they'll try to do like Justice League type of stuff with this version of Batman. I'd really love to see more of Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, since that wasn't really big in this movie. Like, if we saw a Bruce Wayne, it was like him and Alfred, and that was it. Like, it wasn't a lot of him being around other people, so that would have been nice to see a bit more of. I feel like this was like an 80% Batman to 20% Bruce Wayne situation. Which I guess if you're going to a movie called The Batman, it makes sense that there's no Bruce Wayne, or less Bruce Wayne than Batman. I'm just beginning to ramble at this point. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on The Batman. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Mixed Media Reviews Podcast. Please leave me a comment to let me know if you agreed, or if you have any suggestions, or if you disagreed. You can find me anywhere you find your podcasts, probably. Please join me next week, where I'll be reviewing the book Iron Widow by Jiren J. Zhao. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye!